Welcome to the Buddhistisches Tor Berlin podcast. Join us for live recordings from classes, insightful talks, and guided meditations.
Taraparlita mentioned already, I'm going to tell a story this morning. It's not the morning now, is it? This afternoon, about one of the Buddha's female disciples called Kisagotami. So we'll get there eventually, but I just got a few other things to say to begin with. So first of all, I just want to say something about this image of the Buddha here. So I brought this from home. This is the main image of the Buddha that I have on my shrine. You can come up and have a look at the end if you like, if you want a closer look. And I was looking at it this week and I thought I just have to say something about it on Saturday. So I don't know about you, but it's been a busy week for me. It's that kind of back to school, back to work week, isn't it, for a lot of people. Suddenly life seems busier and the days are getting shorter and the light's coming in. That's affected my meditation. So I think it was Tuesday morning I was sat there and just more distracted than usual. And at one point I just decided, okay, I'm going to open my eyes. It's like, let's not pretend I'm doing some sort of special meditation. I'll just open my eyes and I'll just look at the shrine. So I was just looking at this image for, I don't know how long, but that was the meditation, just looking at the image of the Buddha. And it's kind of loaded with memories for me, this image. So I've had it about 5 years. And it's been the main image on my shrine for the last 5 years. And I got it at a time when I was also struggling in meditation. So at that time, I was doing a meditation practice where you visualize a particular Buddha. So the Buddha Amitabha, whose name means infinite light. And he's red. So made of kind of red light. So I was doing this visualization practice. And then I just couldn't do it anymore. So for some reason it's like it was impossible. And I would try to bring this red Buddha to mind and all I would get was kind of black darkness. And I kind of panicked and then started to think, okay, well, let's just explore what this is like. And it was at that time that I found this image and I was drawn to it because of the black background. The fact that it's dark and the Buddha is appearing within darkness. So this is a Japanese image, probably based on images from the 14th to the 16th century. And it depicts a particular Buddha. It's actually the Buddha Amitabha, but not red, appearing at the time of death. So sometimes people would have these screens at their bedside, on their deathbed. So I was drawn to this because it was telling me that sometimes Buddhas appear in the dark. That was the message the image was giving me. So even in dark times when you can't meditate or you're confused or you're really busy, even if you're on your deathbed, maybe Buddhas can appear. And I'm saying that poetically. Buddhas can appear means something can break through that gives us a sense of direction, meaning, beauty, truth, love, however you want to describe what the Buddha represents. So maybe that can appear in the midst of darkness. So it helped my meditation then. It gave me a sense of hope that a Buddha can appear in the dark. And it came back. Things came back. And even this week, being a bit busier in the mind, looking at the image, it's okay now, things have settled, life goes on, experience changes, doesn't it? So anyway, I thought I had to mention that today. It seemed important to mention that today. But also it's inspired my reflections this week in terms of the story that we'll come to eventually in this little ramble talk this morning. So sometimes Buddhas appear in the dark, and at other times we might have to go into the dark to find them. That was one reflection this week. I quite like that. Sometimes Buddhas appear in the dark, at other times we have to go into the dark to find them. So what do I mean by that? 2 quotes, or a quote and a poem I'll throw in. It's a quote by a poet, W.H. Auden, who I have to say I don't know very much about. I think he was British and lived in America, but maybe other people are more aware than I am of this. And he once said, "We are being lived by forces we pretend to understand." So we are being lived by forces we pretend to understand. I was quite struck by that when I first heard it. So this idea that we're kind of being blown around or moved, we're being moved by forces that we pretend to understand, or we might have explanations of what those forces are, we might have names for them, we might have explanations of why we're moved by particular forces. But we, in a sense, Auden's saying that there's something about that process of explanation that is a pretense. We don't really know. We're being moved by forces that we pretend to understand. And I can relate to that. I can, even now giving this talk, it's like there's definitely something in me that has to talk. I like talking in front of people. I hope that comes across, that there's I'm enjoying myself sat here, and I feel fairly relaxed. And then there's another part of me that just doesn't want to do this at all. And I've probably mentioned this before, so sorry if it's getting boring. But occasionally I get this kind of tightness in my throat. And it's usually before I give a talk and after I've given a talk. And it's nothing to do with having to raise my voice to speak to a room full of people. I think, I could have an explanation, couldn't I? That it's because I have to project my voice to the back. Maybe it's because of my posture, and maybe I'm doing this a bit too much. Tell me if I am. Give me some feedback. Try to work on that. Maybe it's that. Maybe I'm scared of you in some way. Maybe being under the spotlight and all these eyes, maybe that freaks me out on some deeper level. But I don't know. All I know is that there is this kind of clash of forces, one that really wants to do this and one that actually would rather be at home, kind of in the privacy of my own room. So I'm feeling that now, just that play of forces that I don't really understand. But if I understood it, then I could just do whatever I need to do to make my throat be fine when I give talks. But I don't know why that happens. But that can manifest in all different ways, can't it? So, whether we're somebody that kind of is more explosive, let's say, whether things happen in life and there's more of an explosive reaction, whether something nice happens and we kind of explode with joy, something bad happens, we explode with rage or sadness, or maybe we freeze a bit, maybe we close down to things, even good things, happy things. I get that myself. It's like something really nice is happening and part of me just doesn't want to fully enjoy it. There's a kind of, this is nice, but I'm just going to stay in the box a little bit. So it depends, doesn't it, on the individual, how we respond to life. What are the forces that are at play? And we can have ideas about why certain forces affect us and why others don't. Was it things in our past, our upbringing, our influences? Were we born with things? We don't really know, but we can have some idea. But ultimately, maybe our understanding is only provisional. I wouldn't go so far as Auden as to say pretense, but maybe it's always got to be provisional. So that's what he says. Then the next thing I thought I would throw in, rather than a teaching from a poet. This is a poem from a teacher. So, poem by our teacher, or my teacher at least, Sangharakshita, who's the English monk on the right-hand side of our shrine. So he founded the Triratna community, of which this centre is part. And he liked to write poems, because this is a collection of his complete poems, so there's quite a lot there. People have different opinions about his poetry. I will keep mine to myself, but I'm reading it, so I must think something of it. I really like this one. So this one's called The Gods. One by one, the gods of the underworld emerge into the light of day. Some have raised arms. Some bear on their heads sun, moon, horns, a wide open lotus flower. Slowly, gravely they move, emerging from the underworld with steady steps, walking in procession along the curved edge of the world. Slowly, gravely they walk, descending into the underworld, into the darkness, and we must follow. So I can see a parallel there between what the poem is saying and what Auden says. We've been lived by forces we pretend to understand. In this poem, the forces get personified as these gods of the underworld, which is quite a strong image, isn't it? So let's say there's an underworld, and gods are emerging from it into the light of day. And some have raised arms, some bear on their heads sun, moon, horns, a wide open lotus flower. So I think we could say these forces that move us in our lives, it's a bit like they're gods in some way, gods of an underworld that we can't fully see, but every so often they emerge into the light of day, into our lives. Some of them might be like the sun, the rising sun. Some of them might be like the moon, something a bit more mysterious. Some of them might have horns and seem threatening. Some of them might be like a wide open lotus flower of growth and beauty. So these forces are of all different kinds. Maybe that's what ancient cultures were referring to in the gods, seeing gods as personifications of these forces. So again, I can relate to that. So I feel that, these forces in my own lives, they seem to have a character of their own. Obviously, I'm being poetic. They seem to have a character of their own. Sometimes they just pop up, and I might see something like, throat's hurting again, and then it's gone. Joy, not being able to fully let go into the joy, that's happening again, and then disappearing. But what I like here is Sangharakshita speaking about the need to descend into the underworld. So knowing that there are forces in my being, whatever that is, that move me and that I don't fully understand, even that I pretend to understand, I feel the urge sometimes to follow them, to go after them and to find out more about them. To really explore, what am I? Who am I, and why do certain things happen to me? Often with patterns. Why do I get into certain situations, good and bad? Because if we want to have some more say in our lives, be able to shape our lives, surely we need to be aware of what are the forces that are moving us, that seem to be beyond us or outside of us. And I wouldn't say it's like we need to get hold of them and kind of battle with them and master these forces. It's more like we just have to explore them and discover them. But in order to do that, the poem is using the metaphor of going down into the underworld, down into the darkness even, into the place we don't know, into the unknown, to discover these things. We must follow. So maybe the teacher is saying that, go on, you can see there are these forces, but go and explore them. Go and follow them down into wherever they come from. Is that making sense? Yeah? Or at least, giving an interesting image. What popped into my mind just then was the story of Padmasambhava, who some of you will have heard of, others not. So Padmasambhava is a semi-historical, semi-mythic figure from Tibet. He's known as the second Buddha in Tibet because he helped to establish Buddhism itself in Tibet, in that land. So he was an Indian teacher, came over from India into Tibet at the invitation of the king, because they were trying to build a monastery there to help spread the Dharma, try to help spread Buddhism. And they would do all the building work in the daytime, and then the following day when they came back to the building site, I guess, it had all been destroyed overnight. So building in the day, and then at night, in the dark, the monastery gets destroyed. And they didn't know what to do, so they called on Padmasambhava to come and help. And what he did was he tamed the forces, let's say. They get described as demonic forces in this story. He tamed them so that they, rather than destroying the monastery, would help with its construction, help with the building of the monastery. So I think, again, that's an interesting invitation to see these forces that move in our own lives, which might sometimes feel destructive, as having some energy in them that actually might be really important and helpful in building and cultivating the life that we want, cultivating our own lives, releasing our own potential to flourish. Yeah. That's Padmasambhava and part of his story. Let's come to the story now of Kisagotami. So we got there fairly quickly. So I don't know how many of you know this story. Okay, a few shakes of the head, so that's good. It's always good to introduce these stories. Last week, Tarapalita mentioned Angulimala, who was one of the Buddha's disciples, who before that was actually a serial killer and was taking people's fingers and creating this necklace of fingers. You wouldn't think of this person eventually becoming a follower of the Buddha, would you? But anyway, he did. And it was obvious in the room when Tarapalita was telling the story that people had never heard this one before. And when you've heard them many times, it's easy to forget how strong some of them are. So we were thinking in the team over the week, maybe we should start telling more of these stories of the Buddha's early disciples, the people that, if you like, converted to Buddhism or discovered another way of life through the Buddha's teaching. So this is another one of those, and this time it's one of the Buddha's female disciples, and her name was Kisagotami. And Kisagotami apparently means something like scrawny one. Scrawny one. So scrawny, if you don't know the English word, it's kind of skinny, unattractive. Scrawny. I can't really define it, but I can see it. So she was known as Scrawny One, which is not very nice, is it? So you can imagine maybe she was teased or bullied or treated unfairly and unkindly and quite unfortunate, so unlucky in many respects. But then something happened to her which was beyond her wildest hopes and dreams. So she gave birth to a son. So she had a baby boy, Kisagotami. And that, in 2,500 years ago in India, to have a son was the best thing probably that could happen. So you had an heir to the family's wealth or whatever, or occupation. So she was delighted to have given birth to a baby boy. Not only a baby boy, but he was said to be a beautiful child. Yeah, really lovely little boy, happy, healthy, fit, inquisitive. So he was a delight. He was like the love of her life, the perfect child. But before the child had grown up, he died. So this baby that she'd had, this love of her life, died when he was still just an infant. So Kisagotami, she couldn't handle it. I mean, you can imagine being so unfortunate, then having such good fortune and this gift, and then losing it. She just couldn't handle it. So she was going around with the body of her baby boy still in her arms, going all around the village and trying to find help, trying to find somebody that could actually do something about the situation. She thought the boy was either still alive, just sick, or could somehow be brought back. She was really determined that she was going to find somebody who could help. But she couldn't. So she would go to, I'm guessing she would go to people who were known as healers. Maybe she would go to shamans, people living far out of the village, on the outskirts, who were known as healers. But she couldn't find anybody who could help. Just let that go past. But then somebody told her about the Buddha. So they said, well, there's this spiritual teacher, he's got a good reputation. They'd heard good things, and they said, maybe he can help. And she tried everybody else, so she might as well try this guy. So she goes to see the Buddha. And she takes the body of the baby boy to the Buddha, and she says, is there anything that you can do to help? And much to her surprise, the Buddha said, yeah, I can help. So she says, okay, well, what do we need to do? How can you help? And the Buddha said, it's quite simple. All you need to do is bring me a mustard seed. And she thought, well, that's easy. Everybody's got mustard seeds in the house. It's a staple of Indian cooking. I'll just quickly run out and get one. And he said, yeah, but hang on. It has to be a special mustard seed. So it has to be a mustard seed from a house where nobody has died. And she said, okay, well, I can do that. I'm sure I can do that. So she rushes out into the village, and she goes to the first house that she sees, says hello, and asks them, can you give me a mustard seed? And they said, yeah, of course. And then she remembers, but it has to be from a house where nobody's died. So she asks them, just to check, is this a house where nobody has died? And the person says to her, don't remind us of our grief. So she has to leave. And she goes to the next house. Have you got a mustard seed? Yeah, they've got mustard seeds. Has anybody died in the house? Yeah, somebody had died in the house. People would probably say, don't remind us of our grief. That's what we get in the story. But I imagine they would also tell stories about people who died. So she goes to the third place, and the same thing happens, the fourth place, the fifth place, on and on, all the time, trying to find this mustard seed that could cure her baby boy. And eventually, I don't know how many places she tried, how many times, but eventually the fact began to sink in that she was not going to find it. She tried all these houses. She had not found a single house where nobody had died. Thousands of mustard seeds, probably tens of thousands of mustard seeds, but no house, not a single house where nobody had died. So you can imagine the despair, but eventually it begins to dawn on her that she was not going to find it. And instead of continuing to look, she goes back to the Buddha. And she goes up to the Buddha, lays the body of the baby boy in front of the Buddha, and asks for the Buddha to become her teacher. And he did. So he became Kisagotami's teacher. And I believe she gains enlightenment later in her life. But that's the beginning. She becomes what we might call a disciple of the Buddha, to train in his teaching. So I'll just let that sink in a moment. It's probably one of the most moving stories I've ever come across in the early Pali texts. I remember the first time I heard it feeling like when she was going back to the Buddha, when she went to the Buddha for the first time and he said he could help, I remember thinking, oh no, he's going to perform some sort of miracle and bring the kid back to life, and then it's just another superstitious thing that I can't kind of believe in. So it's quite a shock when it doesn't turn out like that. There's no miracle cure. The Buddha's response is on another level to that, on a different level. But then I know other people whose response to the story is, that was really mean. What the Buddha did was really mean because he knew she would never find it and he was giving a false hope. So that's another interpretation. But let's explore it a bit more and see if we can just, I don't know, I don't want to explain the story. I don't even want to unpack the story. I think what is good to do with it is just to dwell on it and to look at different aspects of it and be with it and see what moves us. So it would be different things for different people. So just going back to the things I said at the beginning, the fact that human lives, I would say, are being lived by forces we pretend to understand. You can kind of see the forces at play in Kisagotami's life. So one of the obvious ones that it's easy to connect with, I think, is her delight. Her misfortune in terms of being called scrawny one, and all the implications of that if we start to imagine what that is like. And then her complete delight at the birth of the boy. I don't have children, so I'm not even going to pretend I can understand, what it's like to have a child. But I've seen my brother have a couple of kids, and just how much joy, like in a sense, in a split second. Like, okay, there's 9 months of build-up, but then suddenly it's here. The baby is here, and the kind of joy that I witnessed in him at that time. All the other emotions too, but the overwhelming one being joy, I think. So I can't quite imagine it for myself, but I can get a sense from other people. Maybe some of you have got kids and you can relate to what that's like, but for her, I imagine just this strong force of delight. And then, of course, we get the tragedy and the loss of the baby. And yeah, if I can't imagine what it's like to have children, I've got absolutely no sense of what it must be like to lose one. But that's what happens, isn't it, in the story? I can only begin to imagine what that's like. And for Kisagotami, there's this delusion. There's this strong force in her of not being able to accept what has happened and looking for a reversal of what has happened. In some way, some magic that is going to reverse the whole notion of death. So this strong force of delusion, I can't think of another word for it at the moment. And I'm not saying that, it's not like a harsh judgment, because I completely empathize with why somebody would do that. I mean, I have it in my own life just in very trivial things, like wishing things were different. Yeah? But in this case, the whole thing is so much more charged. So there's this force of delusion at play in her life. So I can see in the story that what Auden says is true, that we've been lived by forces we pretend to understand. And then the Buddha meets Kisagotami, and there's his response to that delusion. Like I say, some people interpret this as being somehow unfair on her or cruel on her, playing a trick on her. I think what the Buddha does in this situation is he sends Kisagotami on an underworld journey. So he sends her into the underworld, just drawing that image from the poem. She might not be able to accept the reality of death in this situation. So the Buddha sends her into the realm of the dead. So he gets her to go from house to house, and okay, she's meeting the living, she's meeting people who are alive, but in a sense she's also meeting people who are not alive. She's meeting the dead. So you get this response to her in the story of, don't remind us of our grief. But I can't help imagining that not everybody would have said that, and that people would have started to talk about loved ones who had died. So we've all got different relationships with death, haven't we? And we'll have met people with different relationships to death. In my family, I have a grandfather who died before I was born, and he's hardly ever talked about. So I can relate to that. Don't remind us of our grief. It seems too painful for people to talk about. Other times, I've met people who had loved ones who died, and they always talk about them. And they have pictures of them, and they want to share stories. They joyfully share those stories. So I can't help but imagine that Kisagotami was also meeting people who would tell her all about their loved one, their grandmother, their husband, their child, who died in that kind of way. So when I really imagine this story, and that's what we've got to do, we don't get that much information in them, so we have to enter into them in our imagination. I just imagine her going round and hearing all these stories and being moved by those stories. Okay, she doesn't get what she wants. She doesn't get the mustard seed from a house where nobody dies. But instead, I think what she gets, or what she comes into contact with in herself, is empathy. And even we could say love and compassion, I would imagine. Going around hearing people's stories, both the stories of the living and the stories of the dead, that fills her mind with all these other people. And she begins to realize the insight that she has is that, it's not just me. It's not just me who has experienced this tragedy, other people have too. She begins to see the universal truth of the fact that life is finite, that death is part of life. We're born and we die, and that's true for everybody. It's true for all the people in the houses she met, it's true for ourselves, it's true for her child. And I think once we touch into that, that can really affect the way we relate both to ourselves and to other people. Just this week, like having this story in my mind, Berlin is different. You know, walking around and just seeing people sunbathing and drinking beer on the canal, and it's a different vision that kind of opens up when we bear like this in mind. I would say it also, it's got a sobering effect, hasn't it? Like, I can feel it in the room. I'm slightly, I won't talk about myself, but in sharing the story and talking about it, there's a slight discomfort for me, both because of my own relationship to the inevitability of death, but also yours, and like, what is this doing to you? So there's a sobering quality, I think, to a story like this. But there's also like a beauty to it, a kind of exquisite beauty to a story like this, or just to the reflection of impermanence and death, because we can cherish things more. So if we know that something is impermanent, then we can really cherish it. Sometimes Buddhism gets this reputation of being somehow pessimistic and nihilistic and always talking about death and suffering. But the other side to that is beauty and the capacity to cherish something for what it is, which is an unfolding life, something that unfolds and transforms into something else. Yeah? So what the Buddha gives Kisagotami, I think, the teaching, is to go on an underworld journey and to see all that, to discover all that, and she does. And then she can let go. She can let go of holding on to the grief that is just her grief, and connect, probably, with the grief of others, empathize with others, love others as well. Again, sometimes when people talk about this story, they say that Kisagotami was attached to the baby, and the Buddha teaches her to let go of the attachment. I can't sort of relate to it like that. I don't think it's like that. It's not like she had a problem and she had to deal with it and let go and then get on with her life. I see it as much more kind of colourful and emotional than that. Like, how could you ever get over that and forget and just, okay, I'm unattached and above all that? That's not what being fully human is about, is it? It's about fully inhabiting our emotions, fully inhabiting our sadness, grief, frustration, happiness, joy, sense of freedom, sense of beauty. If Buddhism is about shrinking that down to some cool aloofness, like, I'm out of here. Like, I'd have been out of here way before now. I think it's the opposite. I think it's about life in full colour and the full richness of the whole emotional range of human life. And I think that's what Buddhist practice is opening up for us. So we don't over-identify with one particularly hard emotion to bear. We see that other people experience that too. we see that it's not just us, but that those forces that we pretend to understand are all universal. In the Greek tradition, Greek mythology, they say that Hades, who's the god of the underworld, the lord of the underworld, Hades is Dionysus. I think it was Heraclitus that said that. Hades is Dionysus. So Dionysus is the god of wine and song. So there's something that connects both the god of death and the realm of the dead and the life of the living, the full life of the living, the joy, the song, the merriment, the play of life. Those things come together, and maybe what we talk about as transcendence maybe is a full experiencing of both of those apparent opposites. Am I making sense? Does that? Yeah, okay. I'm sort of thinking aloud, which is quite nice to do. Was there anything else I wanted to think? Okay, so the end of the story, maybe that's already enough, but the end of the story where Kisagotami becomes the Buddha's disciple. I don't know if people read the WhatsApp message, but I had a little thing about discipleship and whether that's a good word. And yeah, I think it is the best word, because it seems wrong to me to talk about disciples of the Buddha as students of the Buddha. Sometimes people talk of that teacher-student kind of dynamic, but sounds a bit too, what did I say? Sorry, I'm losing my mind. It's a bit too clinical, isn't it? Like you go to the Buddha, he gives you a teaching about something in particular, and then you go away and live the rest of your life and it's not touched by it. But I don't think the Buddha as a teacher is like that. It's a whole life teaching. If we are serious about Buddhism and practicing Buddhism, it transforms the whole of our life. There's no area that's not affected by the Buddha's teaching. There's no area that you can't carry the Buddha's teaching into. So to say that you're a student of Buddhism, it sounds a little bit too weak to me. And the other term that gets used is follower, but again, I think that doesn't quite cut it either. It sounds a bit too blind. But disciple suggests more like training, receiving a discipline, receiving a framework that's going to help you make that journey through life, even the underworld journeys that we're all going to have to go through at different times. It enriches you for that journey. So I like the term discipleship. I'm happy to think of myself as a disciple of the Buddha. He's given me the training, even through this chain of people and after all these hundreds of years, that gives me something to navigate in the dark. So Kisagotami becomes a disciple. She asks the Buddha to take her as his disciple, and she trains. She trains under the Buddha, practices his Dharma, presumably the ethical precepts, meditation, discussing with others the Buddha's teaching, reciting the teachings, remembering it all, having insights, flashes where she sees other universal truths. So she does that, and I think what is clear from the story, and maybe from the poem as well, and the quote from Auden, is that life does have this underworld element. There are forces that we don't fully understand, but that we can come into relationship to. We can learn to become more familiar with, come into relationship to, even if it's quite elusive. There are ways we can do that, and Buddhism offers us a good way to do that, I would say, whether it's through attention to our ethical lives, through meditation, through hearing stories like this and reflecting on the stories, through ritual, through mantra. Buddhism is giving us a framework, a training to make that journey through life into that full colour experience of life, beyond even probably what we can imagine from where we are. There are other ways to do that, obviously, and other guides that you can find. We're fortunate to live in a time, aren't we, where teachings are very accessible, whether it's traditional religious teachings or more modern psychological teachings or teaching through the arts or sciences or whatever. There's a whole range to explore, different guides for the journey. But for me, the Buddha is the teacher. I think in the Buddha and his teaching, I've found what makes sense of the other teachings and the other approaches, which are helpful too for all different kinds of reasons. So maybe it is for you too, maybe it could be. It's worth exploring, isn't it? So that's what I think, but I want to hear more about what you think, and we'll push the time a little bit and just have a few minutes if there are any comments, even just, you don't have to ask questions, but comments about the story, anything that